In the shadow of Seoul's gleaming towers, where neon lights battled with starlight and the scent of street food mingled with expensive perfume, there lived a young woman named Zara. She had come from Lagos, Nigeria, when she was 3 years old with her father and stepmother, chasing a dream that had turned into a nightmare. Zara's skin was like polished obsidian, her eyes held the fierce intelligence of her Yoruba ancestors, and her spirit, though battered, remained unbroken. At 23, she worked at a small flower shop in Itaewon, the only place in Seoul that felt remotely like home, where diversity wasn't an anomaly but a fact of life. Her father had fallen ill and died few months after they arrived Seoul, leaving Zara alone with her stepmother, a woman whose heart was as cold as a Seoul winter. Her stepmother, Mrs. Adeyemi, had remarried a wealthy Korean businessman and now spent her days gambling away his money and scheming to climb higher up Seoul's ruthless social ladder. Zara's stepsister, Chioma, had been the family's golden child, beautiful, cunning, and engaged to one of Seoul's most eligible bachelors, a billionaire CEO named Kong Ji-woo. But 3 days before the wedding, Chioma had run away with her secret lover, a struggling artist she'd been hiding from the family. The scandal had been devastating. The Kong family, one of the most powerful chaebol dynasties in Korea, had threatened to destroy the Adeyemi family's business interests. Mrs. Adeyemi, desperate and ruthless, had made a decision that would change Zara's life forever. "You'll take Chioma's place," her stepmother had announced, her voice cold and final. "What?" Zara had stared at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious. The wedding is in 3 days. The Kong family doesn't know what Chioma looks like. They've only seen photos, and from a distance at formal events. You're the same height, same build. With the right makeup and dress, no one will know until after the ceremony." "This is insane," Zara had protested. "It's fraud. It's survival," her stepmother had snapped. "The Kangs will destroy us if there's no bride. And you'll do this, or I'll make sure you're deported back to Nigeria with nothing. I know people in immigration." One phone call, Zara. So Zara had found herself standing in a luxury bridal suite at the Schiller Hotel, being dressed like a sacrificial lamb. The wedding dress was exquisite, white silk with delicate embroidery, costing more than she'd earn in 10 years at the flower shop. But it felt like a shroud. She had heard the rumors about Kong Ji-woo, known in Seoul's business circles as the Devil of Gangnam. At 34, he was the CEO of Kongwon Corporation, a merger between his Korean father's technology empire and his Italian mother's luxury goods conglomerate. He was brilliant, ruthless, and notoriously cold-hearted. The tabloids loved him, his sharp features, his perfectly tailored suits, his reputation for crushing competitors without mercy. But they also whispered about his dark side, about business rivals who had mysteriously lost everything, about the women who entered his life and left broken. Zara had never seen him in person. She only knew that he had agreed to marry Chioma as part of a business alliance between their families. Love had nothing to do with it. The wedding ceremony was a blur. Zara walked down the aisle of the Grand Hotel ballroom, her face partially obscured by the traditional wedding veil. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, but she kept her gaze fixed forward, toward the man waiting at the altar. When she finally looked up at Kong Ji-woo, her breath caught. He was devastatingly handsome, tall and lean, with the sharp features of his Italian heritage softened slightly by Korean genetics. His dark eyes were cold, assessing, holding no warmth or joy. This was a business transaction to him, nothing more. If he noticed anything different about his bride, he gave no sign. The ceremony proceeded with mechanical precision. They exchanged vows in Korean and English, their voices formal and emotionless. When Ji-woo lifted her veil to kiss her, his eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his composure. Up close, there was no mistaking that she wasn't Chioma. Her features were different, her skin a richer, darker brown than Chioma's lighter complexion. "Who?" he began, but the officiant was already pronouncing them husband and wife, and the crowd was applauding, and it was too late. Ji-woo's jaw clenched, but he was too proud, too aware of the hundreds of guests watching to cause a scene. He kissed her briefly, coldly, his lips barely brushing hers. But Zara could feel the fury radiating from him like heat from a furnace. The reception was torture. Ji-woo played the role of happy groom with practiced ease, but whenever they were close enough that no one else could hear, his voice was ice. "I don't know what game you're playing," he whispered as they danced their first dance, his hand on her waist feeling more like a trap than an embrace. "But when we get home, you're going to explain everything. And then you're going to regret ever crossing me." Zara's heart hammered with fear, but she lifted her chin. "I didn't cross you. I'm a victim in this too." "We'll see about that," Ji-woo said coldly. When they finally left the reception, heading to Ji-woo's penthouse in the exclusive UN village overlooking the Han River, Zara felt like a prisoner being led to execution. The penthouse was stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and expensive art. But it felt cold, empty, like a museum rather than a home. Ji-woo poured himself a whiskey and turned to face her, his expression hard. "Start talking. Who are you, and where is Chioma?" Zara took a deep breath and told him everything. About Chioma running away, about her stepmother's threats, about being forced into this deception. She left nothing out, her voice steady despite her fear. When she finished, Ji-woo stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a cold, bitter sound that made her skin crawl. "So I've been tricked into marrying a nobody. A flower shop girl from Nigeria." He downed his whiskey in one gulp. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This marriage was a strategic alliance. Chioma's family has connections I need for expansion into West African markets. You're useless to me." "Then let me go," Zara said quietly. "Annul the marriage. I don't want to be here any more than you want me here. Annul." Ji-woo laughed again. "And admit to all of Seoul that I was fooled? That the great Kong Ji-woo was tricked into marrying the wrong woman? My reputation would be destroyed. My enemies would feast on this." He moved closer, and Zara forced herself not to back away. "No, here's what's going to happen. We're going to stay married for exactly 2 years, the length of the original contract with Chioma's family. During that time, you'll play the role of my dutiful wife in public. And in private, you'll serve me however I require." "Serve you?" Zara's voice shook slightly. Ji-woo's smile was cruel. "Did you think this would be a marriage in name only? No, sweetheart. If I'm stuck with you for 3 years, I'm going to get something out of it. You'll warm my bed. You'll satisfy my needs. Consider it payment for the fraud you've committed." "I didn't commit fraud," Zara protested. "I was forced." "I don't care," Ji-woo cut her off. "Here's the reality, you're trapped. If you try to leave, I'll have you arrested for fraud and deported. I'll make sure you never work again, anywhere. Your stepmother too. I'll destroy her completely. But if you cooperate, if you play your role perfectly, at the end of 2 years, I'll give you a generous settlement and your freedom. 5 million won. Enough to start a new life anywhere you want." Zara stared at him, seeing the cold calculation in his eyes. He wasn't bluffing. He had the power to do everything he threatened, and they both knew it. "Do we have a deal?" Ji-woo asked. What choice did she have? Zara nodded slowly. 2 years. Then I'm free. 2 years, Ji-woo agreed. Starting now. That first night was brutal. Ji-woo was not gentle, not kind. He took what he wanted with a cold efficiency that left Zara feeling used and hollow. Afterward, he rolled away from her without a word, leaving her alone in the massive bed as he retreated to his study. Zara lay there in the darkness, tears sliding silently down her cheeks, and wondered how she would survive 3 years of this. But Zara was a strong woman who knew that survival required more than just endurance. It required strategy, intelligence, and the ability to find strength even in the darkest places. So she began to study her cold husband. Ji-woo kept to a rigid schedule. He woke at 5 a.m., worked out for an hour, then left for his office by 7 a.m. He rarely returned before midnight. When he was home, he was either working in his study or demanding Zara's presence in his bed. He was cold, controlled, never showing emotion except for occasional flashes of anger. He spoke to her only when necessary, treating her more like a possession than a person. But Zara noticed things. Small things that didn't fit the image of the heartless devil. She noticed that he kept a photograph hidden in his desk drawer. A picture of a young woman who looked like him, with the same sharp features. When she asked Mrs. Park, the elderly housekeeper who came twice a week, about it, the old woman's face had grown sad. "That's his younger sister, Minacio," Mrs. Park had whispered. "She died 5 years ago. Suicide. She was engaged to a man chosen by the family, but she was in love with someone else. She couldn't bear the marriage, so she..." Mrs. Park had trailed off, shaking her head. Zara had felt something crack in her understanding of Ji-woo. Was that why he was so cold? Because he'd lost someone he loved to the same kind of arranged marriage he'd agreed to himself? She noticed that despite his wealth, Ji-woo lived simply. His clothes were expensive but understated. He ate basic meals, rice, soup, grilled fish, nothing fancy. He donated enormous sums to charity anonymously, including a foundation for suicide prevention. She noticed that late at night, when he thought she was asleep, he would stand at the windows overlooking Seoul, and his expression would be lost, lonely, human. One night, 3 months into their marriage, everything changed. Ji-woo came home earlier than usual, stumbling slightly. Zara realized with shock that he was drunk, the first time she'd ever seen him anything less than perfectly controlled. "Bad day?" she asked carefully. Ji-woo laughed bitterly. "Bad life." He slumped onto the couch. "Do you know what today is?" "No." "Minacio's birthday. She would have been 30. His voice cracked. "She'd still be alive if I'd paid attention. If I'd seen how much she was suffering. If I'd told our father to go to hell with his arranged marriage plans." Zara sat beside him cautiously. "It wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" Ji-woo looked at her, and for the first time, she saw real emotion in his eyes. Grief, guilt, pain. "I knew she didn't want to marry that man. But I told her to do her duty, to think of the family. I was just like my father. And she killed herself rather than live the life we'd chosen for her." "You didn't know," Zara said softly. "You couldn't have known it would go that far." "I should have," Ji-woo said. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "And now I'm doing the same thing. Forcing you into a life you don't want. Using you because I'm too proud to admit I was tricked. I'm a monster, just like they say." Zara looked at this powerful man, and saw something she'd never expected. A broken human being, drowning in guilt and loneliness. "You're not a monster," she heard herself say. "You're just hurt." Ji-woo stared at her, his dark eyes searching her face. "Why don't you hate me? I've been cruel to you. I've used you. I should hate you," Zara admitted. "But I don't. Maybe because I understand what it's like to be trapped. To have your choices taken away." Something shifted in Ji-woo's expression. He lifted his hand, touching her face gently, the first gentle touch he'd ever given her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For everything. You deserved better than this. Better than me." "So did you," Zara said. And then Ji-woo kissed her, but this time it was different. Not cold or demanding, but tender, almost desperate. Like a drowning man reaching for air. Zara kissed him back, her hands threading through his hair, and for the first time, she felt something beyond fear or duty. She felt desire, connection, the spark of something that might impossibly be real. That night, when they made love, it wasn't about punishment or control. It was about two broken people reaching for each other in the darkness, seeking comfort, seeking connection, seeking something neither of them could name but both desperately needed. Afterward, Ji-woo held her close, his face buried in her hair. "Stay," he whispered. "Please stay." "I'm not going anywhere," Zara said, and meant it. From that night forward, things changed between them. Ji-woo came home earlier. They ate dinner together, talking about their days. He asked about her life, her dreams, her family in Nigeria. He taught her about Korean business culture, about his company, about his own childhood trapped in a family that valued power over happiness. They explored soul together, not the glittering public soul of their wedding, but the hidden soul. The tiny restaurants in back alleys where ajumas served the best kimchi jjigae. The jazz clubs in Itaewon where musicians played until dawn. The quiet temples where monks still chanted prayers in the misty morning. Ji-woo showed her his sister's favorite places. A bookstore in Bukshan, a cafe in Yeonam-dong, the fortress walls of Nam-san where Minaseo used to go to think. Ji-woo said one evening as they stood on those fortress walls, soul spread below them like scattered diamonds. You're brave like her. Strong. I don't feel strong, Zara admitted. I feel like I'm barely holding on. That's what strength is, Ji-woo said, taking her hand. Not the absence of fear, but surviving despite it. 6 months into their marriage, Zara realized she was falling in love with her husband. It terrified her. This wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to endure 2 years, take her money, and leave. She wasn't supposed to care about Ji-woo's smile when he came home and found her waiting. She wasn't supposed to ache when he touched her. She wasn't supposed to worry when he worked too late or looked stressed. But she did. She cared desperately, helplessly, completely. And she could see that Ji-woo was changing too. The cold, controlled mask he wore in public was slipping when they were alone. He laughed more. He relaxed. He let her see the man who loved his sister's memory, who felt guilty for his father's sins, who dreamed of changing the ruthless business culture that had destroyed so many lives. One evening, as they lay tangled together in bed, Ji-woo said something that made Zara's heart stop. I'm glad it was you, he said quietly. What? That night. The wedding. I'm glad it was you instead of Chioma. He turned to face her, his eyes serious. If it had been her, this would have been exactly what it was supposed to be, a cold business arrangement. But you, Zara, you've changed everything. You've changed me. Ji-woo, Zara began, but he put a finger over her lips. I know we said 2 years. I know there's a contract, an end date. But I don't want that anymore. He took a deep breath. I want this to be real. I want us to be real. Not because of any contract or obligation, but because we choose it. Because I choose you. Tears filled Zara's eyes. You mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life, Ji-woo said. He kissed her softly. I love you, Zara. I don't know when it happened, or how, but I do. I love you. I love you too, Zara whispered, and felt the truth of it sing through her bones. They made love then with a tenderness and passion that left them both shaking. And afterward, as Zara drifted towards sleep in Ji-woo's arms, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. Ji-woo's father, Kong Dong-hyun, was not a man who tolerated defiance. When he learned that his son had been tricked into marrying the wrong woman, he'd been furious. But he'd held his tongue, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came at a family dinner 8 months into Ji-woo and Zara's marriage. The dinner was held at the Kong family's compound in Pyeongchang-dong, a sprawling traditional Korean estate that screamed old money and older power. Ji-woo had warned Zara it would be difficult, but she'd insisted on going. I'm your wife, she'd said firmly. It's time I met your family properly. The dinner was exactly as horrible as Zara had feared. Ji-woo's father barely acknowledged her, asking pointed questions about her background and family connections in a tone that made it clear she had neither. Ji-woo's mother, Elena Kong, was slightly warmer but clearly uncomfortable with her son's choice of bride. The worst was Ji-woo's older brother, Kong Min-jun, heir to the family's Korean business empire. He looked at Zara like she was a bug he wanted to crush. So you're the flower shop girl who tricked my brother, Min-jun said with a cold smile. Quite the accomplishment. I wonder what other tricks you have. I didn't trick anyone, Zara said, keeping her voice steady. I was forced into a marriage with one of Korea's richest men, Min-jun interrupted. How tragic for you. That's enough, Ji-woo said sharply. Zara is my wife. You will treat her with respect. Respect. Dong Hyun set down his chopsticks with a sharp click. You want us to respect the woman who committed fraud? Who deceived this entire family? She committed no fraud, Ji-woo said. She was forced by her stepmother. She's a victim. Is that what you tell yourself? Dong Hyun's smile was cruel. Or is it just convenient that the victim has access to your wealth now? Father. Enough, Dong Hyun said coldly. Ji-woo, we've been patient. We've allowed this farce to continue because we hoped you'd come to your senses. But it's clear you've been compromised. Therefore, the family has made a decision. Ji-woo's jaw clenched. What decision? You will divorce this woman immediately, Dong Hyun said. We've already found a suitable replacement bride, Park Ji-won, daughter of Park Industries. The marriage will restore our family's honor and provide the business alliances we need. No, Ji-woo said flatly. This isn't a request, Dong Hyun said, his voice dangerous. Divorce her, or we will remove you as CEO of Kongwon Cooperation. The board will support us. We've already secured the votes. Ji-woo stood abruptly, pulling Zara up with him. Then remove me. Because I'm not divorcing my wife. Ji-woo, his mother began, but he cut her off. Zara is my wife. Not because of any business deal or family arrangement, but because I choose her. I love her. And I won't sacrifice her the way you made me sacrifice Min Seo. The mention of Min Seo made everyone freeze. Don't you dare use your sister's death to justify this, Dong Hyun said, his voice shaking with rage. Why not? Ji-woo shot back. You used her life to advance your business interests. You forced her into an engagement she didn't want, and when she couldn't bear it anymore, she killed herself. And you learned nothing. You're trying to do the same thing to me, to control my life, to treat people like chess pieces in your power games. Get out, Dong Hyun said coldly. Get out of this house. And when you're ready to apologize and end this ridiculous marriage, you can come back. But until then, you're no son of mine. Ji-woo took Zara's hand. Fine. Come on, Zara. We're leaving. They walked out of the compound together, and Zara could feel Ji-woo shaking with anger and adrenaline. I'm sorry, she said as they got into the car. I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to lose your family because of me. I'm not losing my family, Ji-woo said firmly. I'm choosing you over their toxicity. There's a difference. But the consequences came swiftly. Within a week, Ji-woo was removed as CEO of Kongwon Corporation. The board voted him out in favor of his brother Min-jun. Ji-woo fought it, but without his family's support, he didn't have the shares to prevent it. Then came the media onslaught. Suddenly, their marriage was national news. Photos of Zara appeared everywhere, with vicious commentary about her background, her appearance, her obvious gold digging. African woman tricks Korean CEO, screamed one headline. Kong family in turmoil over fraudulent marriage, declared another. The racism was overwhelming and undisguised. Comment sections filled with slurs, with people demanding Zara be deported, with threats against her life. Someone threw a rock through the window of the flower shop where she used to work. She received death threats daily. Ji-woo hired security, but Zara could see the toll it was taking on him. He'd lost his company, his family, his reputation, all for her. One night, she made a decision. I'm leaving, she told Ji-woo. He looked up from his laptop, shock on his face. What? This is destroying you, Zara said, tears streaming down her face. You've lost everything because of me. Your company, your family. I don't care, Ji-woo said fiercely, crossing to her and gripping her shoulders. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is you. But I care, Zara said. Ji-woo, I can't watch you lose everything. I can't be the reason your life falls apart. You're not the reason, Ji-woo said. My family's toxicity is the reason. Korea's racism is the reason. But you're the only good thing in my life. The only real thing. Then let me do something real, Zara said. Let me love you enough to let you go. You can divorce me, blame everything on me, reconcile with your family. Get your company back. Get your life back. I don't want that life back, Jiwoo said desperately. I want this life. With you. Don't you understand? Before you, I was just existing. Going through the motions. You woke me up, Zara. You made me feel again. You gave me a reason to be better, to fight for something that matters. But what if it's not enough? Zara whispered. What if we can't survive this? Jiwoo pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Then we'll go down fighting. Together. Because I'd rather have 1 year of being truly alive with you than 30 years of being dead inside without you. Zara clung to him, and for the first time since the dinner, she allowed herself to believe they might actually make it. But Jiwoo wasn't content to just survive. He was determined to fight back. Using his personal wealth and connections outside the family, he founded a new company, Phoenix Group, named for the bird that rises from ashes. It was smaller than Kongwon Cooperation, but it was his, built on principles of ethical business practices and diversity. He recruited talent that the traditional Korean companies overlooked. Women, foreigners, people from lower-class backgrounds. He focused on sustainable technology and fair labor practices. And slowly, Phoenix Group began to thrive. Zara, inspired by Jiwoo's determination, started her own business, an online platform connecting African artisans with Korean buyers. She used her knowledge of both cultures to bridge the gap, and her business grew rapidly. They became a power couple of a different kind, not through family connections or old money, but through innovation and determination. They gave interviews about their relationship, speaking openly about the challenges of interracial marriage in Korea and calling for change. The younger generation embraced them. They became symbols of modern Korea, diverse, global, willing to challenge old traditions. Fashion magazines featured them. Business publications wrote about Phoenix Group's success. Slowly, the narrative began to shift. But the greatest victory came 2 years into their marriage. Zara discovered she was pregnant. When she told Jiwoo, he wept, actual tears streaming down his face as he held her close. A baby, he whispered. We're going to have a baby. Are you happy? Zara asked nervously. Happy. Jiwoo laughed through his tears. Zara, I'm terrified and thrilled and grateful and so deeply in love with you I can hardly breathe. Yes, I'm happy. I'm so happy. The pregnancy was difficult. Zara suffered from severe morning sickness and had to reduce her work hours. Jiwoo became impossibly protective, hovering over her constantly, driving her slightly crazy with his worry. But when their daughter was born, a beautiful baby girl with Jiwoo's sharp features and Zara's warm coloring, they both felt like they'd been given a miracle. They named her Minneseo, honoring Jiwoo's sister. The birth announcement made headlines, and with it came an unexpected letter. It was from Jiwoo's mother, Elena. Dear Jiwoo and Zara, it read. I've been a coward. I allowed my husband's anger and pride to keep me from my son, from the woman who makes him happy. But I don't want to miss knowing my granddaughter. Would you allow an old woman to meet baby Minneseo? I promise to come alone, without judgment, simply as a grandmother who wants to know her family. All of it. Jiwoo and Zara looked at each other for a long time. It's your choice, Zara said. I'll support whatever you decide. Jiwoo read the letter again, his expression conflicted. My mother. She was always caught between my father's demands and her own feelings. Maybe it's time to give her a chance to choose differently. They invited Elena to visit. The meeting was awkward at first, but when Elena held Minneseo for the first time, something crumbled in her composed facade. She's perfect, Elena whispered, tears running down her face. Absolutely perfect. Over the following months, Elena became a regular visitor. She never pushed, never criticized, simply showed up with gifts and love for her granddaughter. Through her, slowly, tentatively, they learned that Jiwoo's father's hold on the family was weakening. Minjun, it turned out, was a terrible CEO. Without Ji-woo's vision and work ethic, Kongwon cooperation was struggling. Profits were down. Key clients were leaving for Phoenix Group. The board was restless. And Dong-hyun was sick, a heart condition that had him facing his own mortality. Few months later, Ji-woo received another visitor. It was his father. Dong-hyun looked older, frailier than Ji-woo remembered. The heart condition had taken its toll, but so had something else. Regret, perhaps, or the weight of his own pride finally crushing him. "I'm dying," Dong-hyun said without preamble. 6 months, maybe less. Ji-woo said nothing, simply waited. "I came to say." Dong-hyun paused, the words clearly difficult. "I was wrong. About you. About your wife. About everything." "Why now?" Ji-woo asked coldly. "Because you're dying? Because you need absolution? Because I don't want to die like I lived, alone, bitter, having destroyed everyone I was supposed to love?" Dong-hyun looked at Ji-woo, and for the first time, Ji-woo saw vulnerability in his father's eyes. "I destroyed Minicio. I nearly destroyed you. I've spent 2 years watching you build something beautiful. A marriage, a company, a family based on love and respect and everything I never valued. And I've realized that you were right. About everything." "I don't know what you want me to say," Ji-woo said. "I don't want you to say anything," Dong-hyun replied. "I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did wrong. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for Minicio, for you, for Zara, for every moment I chose power over family." There was a long silence. Then, surprising himself, Ji-woo said, "Would you like to meet your granddaughter?" Dong-hyun's eyes widened. "You'd let me." "On one condition," Ji-woo said. "You treat Zara with respect. She's my wife, the mother of my child, and the love of my life. If you can't accept that, then there's nothing else to say." "I can accept it," Dong-hyun said quietly. "I do accept it." That afternoon, 3 generations of Kangs sat together in Ji-woo and Zara's living room. It was stilted and uncomfortable, but it was a beginning. Dong-hyun died 4 months later. Before he passed, he changed his will, leaving substantial shares in both Kongwon Cooperation and his personal holdings to Ji-woo and to Minicio. He also left a letter apologizing to Zara for his treatment of her, and another addressed to Minicio for when she was older, warning her never to let power corrupt her humanity the way it had corrupted his. With his father's shares added to his own holdings, Ji-woo had enough votes to return to Kongwon Cooperation if he wanted. The board practically begged him to come back. But Ji-woo declined. "Phoenix Group is my legacy," he told the board. "A company built on principles, not just profit. That's the future I want to build for my daughter." Instead, he negotiated a merger, Kongwon Cooperation and Phoenix Group becoming one company with Ji-woo as CEO and a board that reflected diversity and modern values. It was revolutionary, and it sent shockwaves through Korea's business world. 5 years after that fateful wedding, Ji-woo and Zara stood on the fortress walls of Namsan, Minicio toddling between them, chasing butterflies. "Do you remember our contract?" Zara asked with a smile. 2 years, then 5 million won and freedom?" Ji-woo laughed. "I remember. Best contract I ever broke." "I never got my 5 million won," Zara teased. "No, but you got a husband who loves you, a daughter who adores you, a thriving business, and a mother-in-law who calls you every day," Ji-woo said, pulling her close. "I'd say you made out pretty well in the deal." "Pretty well," Zara agreed, kissing him softly. "Though I still maintain I got the raw end." "You're very demanding." "Only because you're irresistible," Ji-woo murmured against her lips. As they watched the sun set over Seoul, turning the city into a canvas of gold and purple, Zara thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that terrifying wedding day when she'd been a sacrificial lamb, through the darkness and pain, through loss and struggle, to this moment of perfect peace. Ji-woo kissed her temple. "I was wrong about you, you know. That first night, I called you useless. But you saved me, Zara. You saved me from becoming my father, from a life of emptiness and regret. You gave me everything that matters." "We saved each other," Zara corrected. That's what love does. Below them, Seoul sparkled with possibility. A city slowly learning to embrace change, to make room for all kinds of stories, all kinds of love. And in the years that followed, Ji-woo and Zara became architects of that change. They used their platforms, their wealth, and their story to advocate for diversity, for immigrant rights, for breaking down the barriers that had once tried to destroy them. Min Seo grew up bilingual and bicultural, comfortable in both her father's Korean heritage and her mother's Nigerian roots. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ji-woo and Zara renewed their vows, not in a grand hotel ballroom, but in the small flower shop in Itaewon where Zara used to work. The owner, now retired, had given them permission to use the space for the intimate ceremony. Their closest friends gathered, a diverse group of Koreans, Nigerians, and people from a dozen other countries who had become their chosen family. Elena was there, beaming with pride. Even Min Jun attended, humbled by his own failures and slowly learning to respect the brother he'd once scorned. As they exchanged new vows they'd written themselves this time, vows about partnership and equality and choosing each other freely. Zara felt the ghost of that terrified girl she'd been 10 years ago finally rest. I, Ji-woo, take you, Zara, not because of duty or obligation, but because you are my partner, my equal, my home, Ji-woo said, his voice thick with emotion. You turned my darkness into light. You taught me that strength isn't about control. It's about vulnerability. That power isn't about domination. It's about lifting others up. I promise to spend the rest of my life choosing you, honoring you, and building a world worthy of you. Zara's tears flowed freely as she spoke her own vows. I, Zara, take you, Ji-woo, not because I was forced to, but because I want to. You saw me when I felt invisible. You valued me when I felt worthless. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. Together, we've built something beautiful from the ashes of what could have destroyed us. I promise to keep choosing you, keep fighting beside you, keep loving you with everything I am. When they kissed, their friends erupted in applause. That night, after the celebration ended and Min Seo was tucked into bed, Ji-woo and Zara stood on their penthouse balcony, looking out at the Seoul skyline. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Chioma hadn't run away? Zara asked. If you'd married her instead? Ji-woo pulled her close. Sometimes. And I'm grateful every time that she did run away. That you walked down that aisle instead. Because a life without you isn't a life I want to imagine. Even with everything we went through. The pain, the scandal, losing your family. Especially because of that, Ji-woo said firmly. The easy path would have been comfortable, but empty. You gave me something worth fighting for. Something real. I'm still making mistakes, Ji-woo admitted. I'm still learning. But with you, I want to keep learning, keep growing, keep becoming better. That's all any of us can do, Zara said. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe and pulse with life. Somewhere out there, Zara knew, there were other couples fighting against prejudice and tradition. Other love stories struggling to survive in a world that wasn't quite ready for them. But change was coming. She and Ji-woo were proof of that. Not perfect, not without scars, but surviving, thriving, building something new. The following year, Zara published a memoir, From Contract to Forever, a love story against the odds. It became a bestseller, resonating with people around the world who had faced similar struggles. She used her platform to speak about interracial relationships, immigrant experiences, and the courage required to love authentically. Ji-woo, meanwhile, transformed Kongwon Cooperation into Korea's most progressive corporation. He implemented policies supporting working mothers, created mentorship programs for immigrants, and publicly advocated for marriage equality and anti-discrimination laws. They weren't without critics. Conservative groups protested their initiatives. Anonymous online commenters still posted racist vitriol. They received occasional threats that required security to take seriously. But they also received letters, hundreds of them, from young people who saw them as hope. From interracial couples who felt less alone. From parents teaching their children that love transcends boundaries. One letter in particular moved them both to tears. It was from a young Korean man whose sister had committed suicide after being forced into an arranged marriage. He wrote about how reading their story had helped him understand his sister's pain, had given him the courage to defy his own family's pressure to marry someone he didn't love, and had inspired him to start a foundation supporting young people in similar situations. "Your love saved my life," he wrote, "because it showed me that choosing yourself, choosing love, choosing authenticity, these things are possible. Even in Korea. Even now. Thank you for being brave enough to fight." Ji-woo kept that letter in his desk drawer, next to the photograph of Miniseo, a reminder of why their struggle mattered, why their story needed to be told. Years continued to pass, marked by milestones both personal and professional. Phoenix Gangwon Corporation, the merged entity, became Korea's first carbon-neutral tech company. Zara's business expanded into a full international trade platform connecting artisans from 20 African countries with Asian markets. Seoul itself continued to change around them. More interracial couples walked the streets without drawing stares. More international families made Korea their home. The younger generation pushed for progressive policies their parents had resisted. It wasn't a revolution. It was an evolution. Slow, sometimes frustratingly so, but undeniable. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to the Schiller Hotel, the site of that fateful wedding 2 decades earlier. The hotel had offered them a complimentary anniversary dinner in the same ballroom where they'd married, recognizing them as symbols of modern Korean love. As they danced in that same ballroom, now filled with friends and family celebrating with them, Zara thought about how far they'd come. That terrified girl in a borrowed wedding dress, marrying a stranger who would become a monster before transforming into her soulmate. That cold, broken man who had learned to love through the patience and courage of a woman he'd tried to use. "What are you thinking about?" Ji-woo asked, feeling her smile against his shoulder. "How impossible this was," Zara said. "How many things had to go exactly wrong for everything to go exactly right." "Do you believe in fate?" Ji-woo asked. Zara pulled back to look at him. "I believe in choice. I believe that we were put in an impossible situation, but we chose, every day over and over, to love each other anyway. That's not fate. That's better than fate. That's free will and courage and stubborn determination to build something beautiful from something broken." Ji-woo kissed her, deep and sweet, and the room erupted in applause around them. As the party continued around them, Ji-woo and Zara slipped away to the hotel rooftop, the same rooftop where Ji-woo had stood 20 years ago, dreading the wedding he thought would be a loveless business transaction. "If you could go back," Ji-woo asked, "to that night before the wedding, if you could tell that girl in the Goshawon what was coming, all the pain, all the struggle, would you?" Zara considered this carefully. "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell her it'll be okay, that the monster turns into a man, that the nightmare transforms into a dream. But another part of me thinks she needed to walk through the darkness to become who she is now. We both did. We were so broken," Ji-woo said softly. "Both of us. Me with my guilt and control issues, you with your fear and sense of worthlessness. But we healed each other," Zara said. "Not immediately, not perfectly, but eventually. We gave each other permission to be human, to make mistakes, to grow." Pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "You know what I'm most grateful for?" "What?" "That I get to keep choosing you. Every morning for 20 years. I've woken up and chosen you. And every morning for however many years we have left, I'll keep choosing you. That's the real contract. Not the one your stepmother forced you into, but the one we make every day just by staying, by fighting, by loving." Tears slid down Zara's cheeks. "I choose you too. I chose you when I could have run. I chose you when everyone told me to leave. I chose you when it would have been easier to hate you. And I'll keep choosing you every day, until I can't choose anymore." They kissed under the Seoul stars, two people who had found each other in the darkest circumstances and built something luminous.